We're going to be welcoming to the stage Hillel Schuster from KPMG, Ilan Maor from SHENG Enterprises, Tamir from Zdev Medical, and Danny Shacham from Nextec Technologies. And we have our commentators. In case things slow down here on stage, we've got our commentators to liven things up. Howard Kronvard from the U.S. Department of State, Inspector General, VC investor, all-round China in the know person as well. And Yesha Sivan is also going to be a commentator. You want to come over here? Take a seat in the commentators section. Thank you. All right. Zdev, you take it away. Thanks.
Also we need to get
I will introduce the member of the panel, Danny Shacham, sitting right over here, the founder and president of Nextec Technologies, a company that's been acquired by Hans Laser, Chinese listed company, about 2 years ago? Yeah, almost. Hillel Schuster, head of the corporate finance, the China practice of KPMG, Somekh Chaikin. Sagi, Bakshi, the general manager of IronSource.
I'm here.
You are here. You are welcome.
Yes, there is.
Please. Let's have the chairs here. Zdev Tamir in the middle is the owner and acting managing partner of Zdev Medical Limited, and Ilan Maor, right over there, the managing partner of Shagi Enterprise and vice chairman of Israel-China Chamber of Commerce. Okay, thank you all for coming. I will start with a general question. You know, it's clear that Chinese companies and investors are very interested in the Israeli market, technology. From your experience, what segments of technology in the technology industry are the main center of attention of Chinese, and what need in Chinese economy is driving this focus and attention? Let's start with Ilan.
I guess I have this.
Yeah.
I'll be the one starting. Maybe I'll move it to you. It's very difficult to answer because it's like asking what Europe wants from Israel. Because different provinces, different areas in China, different sectors have different needs. But if you try to generalize things, I would say that, first of all, the Chinese companies are looking for advanced manufacturing. This is a major issue because they have a vast industry that is looking for ways and paths in order to upgrade itself and compete in the global market. There are specific segments, including medical device, which is a very huge area. We see more and more on biomedical that is growing. Automotive industry, which is trying to grow faster in China and is looking for new technologies. It's looking like a list that is going to be on, and then it goes to clean tech and agriculture technology. The advantage in this very long list is that basically everyone that is doing a good technology and has a competitive advantage and can work and look at the US and say, in Europe and say, well, they need me, probably is needed in China as well.
Zdev?
My experience is on
Just take the mic. You have one. Okay.
Do you hear me?
No, I don't think
I can barely hear you.
Okay, so my experience is only on a medical device, so I don't know about other fields, but there is a lot of interest on medical device. Many people arriving every week and try to find new technology. And my personal experience is that they also invest. They invested in two of my companies that I founded, medical device, and in another one we have already term sheet, so they are very active.
Okay. Other Sagi, Danny, you want to comment?
Yes.
Sounds better. I'm a little cold. Okay, my name is Danny Shacham, and we decided 2 years ago to find a strategic partner in China. We are dealing with businesses of laser inspection in the production floor for mechanical parts, mostly aerospace and automotive. And we joined with Hans Laser, which is a giant in China, and we sold them 80% of our shares because we understood that they want to have control, and we thought they are the kind of partner that can bring us to the large market of China. We were a small company at the time, we were only 8 people. We knew that we are strong in technology, but we also knew that we are not strong on the marketing and sales and getting close to the industry. And in general, looking 2 years backwards, I think that it was a good decision for Nextec. It was a good decision because we were staying only with 20%, but I believe that we should make this 20% more than the first 80%. And the idea is to go to the Chinese market together with a strong partner that has very long list of customers. China is very interested in high tech and in automation, and we are doing it with industrial automation. And definitely both the automotive market and now also the aerospace market in China is seeking this kind of solutions, technologies, and ability to compete in the world market. This is their target, and they are pushing very hard to do it. It's not easy as it sounds. Of course, there is a difference in mentality, there's a difference in the way we think and they think, but if you overcome these obstacles, I think this is opening a very impressive and good road for an Israeli company. And yes, the IP is important, but if you keep everything close to your heart, you're not going to make business. I think that it's better to share the IP and try to make the business instead.
So, my name is Sagi, I'm from IronSource. IronSource is an internet company focused on software developers, helping them to monetize and distribute their software for a PC, a Mac, or even mobile. And we started to work with the Chinese companies around 3 years ago. Our major partner back then was Baidu, the search giant. And today we work with more than 100 Chinese partners. And we realized that Chinese companies, they are not that interested, at least on the internet side, not that interested in penetrating or conquering the Chinese market itself. They are more looking outside to conquer the world. So we help them grow their international markets, what we call China out. And that works very good for many big companies like the BAT, of course, Baidu, Alibaba, Tencent, who are looking for international users. That's something that we are focused on.
I would just add 2 quick points. On one level, I think China is looking for everything, right? They're so big, they're looking for everything. On another level, when you talk about technology, if you're looking for something inside of China, which is a lot of the medical device, you need to know what diseases are impacting people in China, and it's different than it is in the Western world. So understanding that is a critical part of understanding what they're interested in. The stage, they're not mostly looking for early stage, and if they are, they're not investing directly in your companies almost ever. They're investing through venture capital funds, etc. So I'll let them deploy some capital into Israel. Another thing I think is interesting, in one more sentence, is that I think people in this room don't necessarily fully understand that when you look at the growth of the Chinese market generally, and the fact that the population growth of China is 0, or actually minus, and the amount of energy that's been spent in China in the last 20 years to build up infrastructure, there is incredible capacity and desire to spend money and time and effort to develop infrastructure in other countries. And Israel, I'm talking about non-tech. I'm talking about roads, bridges, desalination, major things like that, tunnels, okay? And in Israel, we have a population that's growing at an incredible rate. And we have an infrastructure that needs incredible amount of investing. So even though obviously we're a very small country, there's a lot of interesting need of matching the need, not only in the technology, bringing our technology to Israel, but also our population growth and our infrastructure for them to spend the money and time and effort to invest here. So that's what you see that also here.
Okay, thank you. Actually, your answer is directly connected to my next question, which is...
No problems.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, we planned it in advance. Yeah. No, we won't. Yeah, we used to think it's like a common knowledge that Chinese investors prefer to invest in proven technology, something they can commercialize immediately. But we feel the change. So my question to you, and we'll start with Ilan. Do you see Chinese investors looking into early stage startups in the near future or already?
Well, I think the answer is definitely yes. About 10 years ago, I attended a seminar with the Ministry of Economy in Singapore, and I was asked to speak about whether Israel will enjoy for a Chinese investment. And I said yes, and everybody smiled and said, come on, Chinese investing in Israel, it's a dream. So 10 years later, it works. So if you ask me to gamble again, in a very short time, much shorter than 10 years, we will have Chinese investors as a major player in the early stage investment in Israel. There are very clear reasons to that. The reason they didn't do it in the past is very simple. It's risky. Chinese investors originally are looking for safe investment, but the need for new technology, for cutting edge technology in China is sometimes even higher than anywhere else in the world. Intel, IBM, Samsung, the others, the big players, when they go into the market, they have a brand to support them. The Chinese companies, when they go into the market using Chinese brand, are very weak because it's made in China. So they have to be, in a way, like us. When we go to the global market, we come from Israel, from a small market. We have no strong backing. So we have to come with a better product than everybody else in order to compete. If you have a startup that is doing the same like everybody else, nobody will buy from him because why buy from Israel or buy local? The same goes for China. If Panda wants to sell in the US, they have to come with a product that is better than the American competitors. With the new technologies, with these early stage technologies, what they need in order to move to the next stage. And I think more and more companies understand it. And you see more and more Chinese giants here in Israel. Because Huawei was the first one, and we see ZTE, and we see many others. And with them, more and more will come, both on cooperation and an investment.
Yeah, I'm not sure I fully 100% agree with Ilan. Of course, I obviously respect his experience. As far as really early stage, I think that most of the Chinese money is still in the state-owned enterprises, what we call SOE, and they are extremely risk-averse and have huge amounts of capital to spend. So the amount of time and attention it takes to invest in individual companies, I think there'll be some, but I don't think the massive amounts of funds will go there. I think that we have seen, certainly in KPMG, and I'm sure Ilan will agree, there are a fair amount of large Chinese companies that would like to invest in early stage in Israel, and their kind of plan for doing that is putting $10, $20 million into a private equity fund and hoping that they could get access to somehow the companies that are within the portfolio of those private equity fund at a later stage. And I think in this sense, Ilan is right, as a Navi, as a prophet, they will in the future gain the confidence once capital is deployed and they have certain successes, invest in individual companies when they have enough of a foothold in a market like Israel. And I'm only talking about very early stage. I'm talking about companies that have, less than 20 or 30 million invested into the company already. I think there'll be very few of those direct investments.
So again, I can talk only from my experience. I founded a few medical startup companies. Actually, in one of them, we had investment in Series A and then in Series B. In the other one, all the three companies that they invested, two of them before C and FDA, and the third one is C and FDA approved, but not CFDA. So, and it looks to me that, like you said, it's going to be more and more like this.
Yeah, I don't have experience with China in the early stage, but from my experience on what we learned in the last 2 years is basically that the Chinese are either will invest via venture capital where they cannot control and they cannot guide the development, or they will take control. And when they take control, they definitely want to see something working, something already in a mature stage. So we see both of them. I mean, there are a lot of venture capitals that are now coming to Israel with Chinese funds, but they don't take the responsibility. When they want to take responsibility and take the product to the market, I think they will not invest in an early stage. And I think for the Israeli point of view, it's not good that a Chinese company will take control on an early stage because they are not as experienced as the high-tech Israeli culture and development to bring the product all the way to the market.
Okay, question. Okay, let's move on. A lot have been said, and there is a lot of interest of Chinese companies in Israeli technology and in Israel in general, but we don't see that much transactions. I think the ratio is not very high. From your experience, a lot have been said about the cultural gaps and the way the business environment. What is the biggest obstacle the parties have to overcome when negotiating a transaction? And yeah, actually, I will start with Danny.
Yes, it's a real obstacle. I mean, we are used to work with Europe. We are used to work with the U.S. and Western culture, and in China, the atmosphere and the culture and the way of doing business is very different. I mean, the word is surprise. They can always surprise you because when you do business with a company in the West and you sign a contract, you assume that you finished the negotiation. In China, they can start some of the negotiations after signing the contract. That's what we experienced. And it's not because they want to squeeze or something. It's because that they think about something which they feel they didn't think before. So they want to put some protection. So they put an amendment, and Zdev used to do a lot of amendments to our contract. But in general, I think that this is correct, is that their experience of doing international business is very limited and very young. And for that matter, the difference in culture is bringing something that if you want to do business and if you want to negotiate, you have to be very patient, you have to build up their belief and their respect and their trust. And sometimes you feel that you're wasting the time because you're spending 2 hours in a restaurant chatting with them. For them, it's very important. They don't care about your product unless they feel very comfortable person to person to deal with you. And you have to build up this bridge before you can go farther.
Well, I would say that taking a risk that everybody here, almost everybody is Israeli, I think that on this regard, most of the problem is on the Israeli side rather than on the Chinese side. Maybe I've been working with China for too long. I found out that when you are looking at the Chinese partner with a real commitment on your side, meaning you understand that you're going, as Danny very well said, into a long, long process, and a very dynamic process that actually never ends. Because there are always changes, there are always differences, and there are always needs to adapt to the situation. If you come with a very strong commitment and understand it's a long-term, it's a dynamic relationship, and you have to find an alliance between what you want to achieve and what your Chinese partner wants to achieve, then you find a very good partner. Now, the same things that serve us so well when we do R&D, the chutzpah, the improvisation, everything is fast, everything has to be done in a different way. That serves very well in R&D. But when it comes to business, it's not really serving us. And when I see a lot of business people, and I've seen in the past 10 years, I don't know, thousands of Israeli businessmen coming to China, we see a lot of issues coming from the Israeli side rather than Chinese side. So if you say what should be done, First of all, be patient, okay? China is a strategic decision and strategic commitment. If you are not willing to take the commitment, money, time, management attention, cost, then put China aside and do something else, okay? Go to the US, go to Europe. It's not a must. Not everybody has to be in China. But if you decide to go to China, remember, it's China, is not Italy. Meaning, go to the dinners, create relationship. Once you create a relationship with the people you work with, it's like we do in Israel. You know, the Chinese are very similar to Israelis in many ways. They are very open, they are very friendly, they are very, very warm. They want to talk about your children and about your house. They would love to come to your house and so on. But you have to create a relationship. Once you create a relationship and you can trust, it is a very long-lasting trust, and you can basically do everything in China. We have a saying, you don't do business with friends. I've been working in China for many years. All my business is done with my friends. If they are not friends, they will become friends probably before we do business together. So, culture gap, yeah, of course, we talk different languages, different hours and so on. Nothing that cannot be breached if you come with the right mindsetting.
Yeah, I just want to echo what Ilan was saying with one very quick story about the requirement for patience in understanding work with China. It's one of my favorite stories. My daughter actually speaks Chinese. So she's been taking lessons for a long time, for many years. So I gave her the lessons. I asked her, she came back from the lesson, I said, Sarit, what did you learn today? So she said, well, we learned tones. So what do you mean tones? She goes, wah, wah, wah. So I asked, the next week, and the next week. We're like 4 or 5 weeks into this, and I'm about, maybe 1,500 Shacham into this. And I'm asking her, what have you learned? And she says, well, we're still working on tones. I'm like, okay, somebody is stealing from me. Now I think that the Chinese lesson is stealing from me. And I think, just replying to what Ilan was saying, was the requirement of patience is very, very important, because you don't necessarily even know if you're getting anywhere at some points. But in fact, very often you really are. That's number one. When I want to dig down just a little bit deeper to understand what's fundamentally happening there, a couple things that I think are happening that people in this room need to understand. Number one, in most cases, the people in this room are the most senior person in your company. And you are trying to do a deal, and you're authorized, and you are oriented toward doing deals quickly, and you are able to make decisions very quickly. Who are you talking to on the other side? In more than 9 out of 10 times, you're talking to at least a person 3 levels below the ultimate decision maker. And I'm not talking about the attorneys, the accountants. In your actual face-to-face negotiation, when you finally get on the plane and you go to China or you go to Beijing or Shanghai, wherever you're going, Hong Kong, you're not talking to the decision maker. And so the process takes a lot of time to build consensus. That's number one. Last point, you need to understand that in your culture, and now I say your because I am originally an American, the first point about being an Israeli is ani lo fraya. Okay? I am not going to get cheated. That is the first point about what does it mean to be Israeli. Now put yourself in that mindset in front of people that you believe have a reputation of people that cannot be trusted. And now go and try to negotiate a deal requiring a tremendous amount of patience. Why you see so much escrow money floating around in all these deals. Okay? It is very difficult to look someone in the face and tell them you want escrow money before you even sign a definitive agreement, and you want the money in an Israeli account or an American account. These are very, very challenging issues, not only technically for the deal makers like the advisors, but also in your relationship that you're trying to build with these people. So I only echo what Ilan is saying. To do deals in China, it has to be strategic, requires a very, very long-term view, and more patience than you're used to.
An interesting story that the outcome of this story is that we understood that we must have a local office in Beijing. We must hand over the business negotiation to the Chinese experts and not do it by ourselves. Why? Because of the following interesting story. On the internet, business is moving very, very fast. So we had a very positive experience with Baidu, who are young and open-minded, and we did a lot of business with them without even meeting them face to face. Then came another company, which I'm not going to mention their name, but a public company, who grew their business with us very rapidly, and trust was built again without meeting them. We reached a level of they were buying traffic from us at a level of $1 million per week, and they were paying week by week, and everything went fine, like a few months. Suddenly, 1 week, the payment didn't arrive, and we continued to provide the traffic. 2 weeks, 3 weeks, and so the debt grew to $3 million. Then we decided to stop because we were not sure that they will pay, and we tried and kept calling them and kept asking what's going on, what's going on with the payment, and they said, it's a bureaucracy, it will come, we will pay. We stopped at that point, and I had to travel to Beijing. I had to go and meet the highest rank that I could arrange, and it was very not clear at that point that they will pay. So it took a few months, as you said, to strengthen the relationship, to get there, to be on the friendship side, and to build the trust again. Eventually, they paid after we promised them additional amount of traffic. Was like tit for tat, but it was very, very risky, and we understood at that point that we don't know anything about China, and handed over the keys to our local new partners in Beijing.
Maybe one thing just to support this. We've been working with one of our leading clients in China. We worked for about 2 years without having any agreement with them. We just shook hands and said, we move forward with the deal, and when it gets closer, we'll set the terms and everything. We've done it twice with very big companies in China. In both cases, when the time came, we asked for a certain amount of money. We said, well, it's not cheap, but okay. And they paid on the time. I'm not sure we would have taken an Israeli company to China and worked with them for 2 years without getting anything and hope it will work out. So again, nobody's perfect either here or there, but like you say, don't come there with the concept saying, oh, those guys are going to kill me.
Okay, Zdev?
I think that trust is the main issue, but another thing is that as startup companies in Israel, and I talk to many, we want their money, and we don't want to give the technology. They want the technology. They don't have exit strategy. So this gap, I think, it's something that creates some difficulties, and this is something that we will have to manage in the future more and more.
Since it's a hot topic, our commentator, you have something to...
We've heard a lot about the things that could be obstacles to investment by Chinese and Israeli companies and the different entities that are involved, but one of the entities hasn't been mentioned is the Israeli government. In the United States, we have what's called CFIUS, which is the Committee on Foreign Investment in the United States, which is a congressionally created body that evaluates foreign investment in the United States to determine whether it presents any national security risks. And so my question for the panelists would be, if or when do you think you might be seeing Israeli government oversight or concern about foreign investment into the country here? And would your answer differ if it were an investment by private Chinese investors or state-owned entities?
Okay.
Talking is easy. That's an issue that came up in the past year, both on the Tnuva deal and the investment in the railway between Tel Aviv and Eilat, which will probably never happen. And it was a big noise in Israel. Well, I would say that the answer is quite simple. There are some segments or some investment that I wouldn't like to see anybody investing in. I wouldn't like a Chinese company buying Rafael, but neither would I like to have an American company buying them. There are some entities in Israel that are Israelis and should be Israelis, or at least partly Israelis, starting from El Al, that we need to fly at any case, the Israeli ports, electricity company, and so on. But other than that, if it's not crucial to the Israeli national security, and we have to limit what we call national security, cows are not really a part of the Israeli national security. Other than that, it doesn't really matter if the investor is a Chinese government-owned company, private company, or an American, European company. As long as the company is strong enough to support the investment and support the activities in Israel and have the right intention, then why should we interfere in that? And I think this is also the government position here, which was challenged in the past year and was discussed internally in the government, in the parliament in Israel, and so on. There was many discussions over that. And I think this is also the trend in Israel. Not only what I have in mind, but also what the government is looking into.
Yeah, I have just a comment on that, which is, firstly, we've had the experience that you described as it relates to Fosun's investment into Phoenix Insurance, which did not require any formal regulation, but it requires regulatory approval from Salinger, from Dwight Salinger, which was quite complex, and it's going to be the same story with the insurance company. I also had a very interesting situation with a Chinese company that bought a stake in an Israeli company that makes a certain kind of PCB, and this Israeli company had a license in the US, something called an ITAR license, which is a license to produce, let's say, a PCB board for a military function. Like what you'd see a little PCB board in an F-16 or something. Sort of low volume type of stuff. Not like for an Apple phone, but like for a tank or for an X-ray machine or whatever. And the US rule said that the controlling entity cannot have a Chinese investor that's larger than 25% without losing its status in its ability to continue to sell into the US market. So, I think there are a lot of esoteric rules, and that requires some very good law firms, like Tadmor, no problem. Commissions in the mail. But you do need a fair amount of understanding, particularly when it's larger, military-oriented, exactly what Ilan was describing. You need to be aware of those types of issues. They can be very significant. I'm not aware, I know that the Prime Minister's office, under a guy named Yossi Katribas, tries to basically manage, it's really the Prime Minister's office in Israel, it's not really the Ministry of Economy as much, unless in tech area through the Chief Scientist's office there is that. But the real relationship with these types of complex matters are managed in Israel through the Prime Minister's office through a guy named Yossi Katribas, and if there's a significant issue, you can access, and that's different than the US, you can access the most senior people in the fastest way possible here in Israel, although the rules are not as clear as they probably ought to be. But the general answer to your question is there is not an organized system here, as probably there is in the US, but there is certainly sort of a father figure, an Abba on top of what's happening here, and it's only in the hands of 4, 5, 6 people in this country that are really managing these issues, as I see it.
Yeah, I just want to add one comment. I fully agree with you, but I spent 25 years in the Israeli armed forces, in the Navy, and the restrictions are very explicit and very strong, and Sibat is a very official entity in Israel that has to make a decision whether something can be exported or not. Any technology that has to do with the national security, with defense. And other than that, I also agree that if it's something that has nothing to do with national security, nothing to do with defense or with the survivability of Israel, then it's like any other business.
Just one other comment on the defense area. If you are a Chinese company, a large one, particularly a state-owned military company, and you come to Israel and you want to just meet Rafael, that is not allowed.
Correct.
Okay? You can meet them like in a conference somewhere in Europe, but these rules are extremely, extremely strict in Israel. And if you call the military and you say, for the Ministry of Defense, and you say, listen, I have a guy coming, we need you to open up an exception. They said, no problem, we can open an exception, 18 months. I said, but just to get a meeting. 18 months. That's the expectation. So just understand this is experiences that we've had in military area, very difficult, particularly with state-owned.
It's none.
Yeah.
Okay.
Sorry.
Well, I have a quick question. How many people in the audience have been in China? Excellent, excellent. So we have Chineses here. China is a huge place. What are some of the differences between the different areas? Because it's not one place, right? It's different characters. How about that?
Wants to start? Okay, you were chosen.
It's an interesting choice, yeah. As it's right to say, China is a vast country, and there are differences between provinces, and the differences are in the industrial segments. You know, if you go to down south, that means electronics and so on. If you want biomedical, you go to Jiangsu and Beijing area and so on. So first of all, the different sectors are usually concentrated in different regions. You know, you go to Kunshan, this is the PCB city, and so on. But it is also differentiate in the way business is being done. Zhejiang province is the center of private business in China, and 90% has been private business there for many years, even before private business was so common in China. If you want to protect your IP, I would look at Jiangsu and Zhejiang and Shanghai area differently than I would look at Xinjiang and the western provinces. At the same time, if I'm looking for government support, probably I'll get much more support if I'm doing, let's say, agriculture. And getting support in the western provinces will be much easier than in the eastern provinces. But having said that, it really depends on so many things. It depends on the nature of the province and the region, and the nature of the city, the person who leads the city or province at a certain time. You know, you can go to Wuxi. We have a subsidiary in Wuxi. There are a period of times where the party secretary of Wuxi can do basically anything he wants. And there are a period of time when there is a review that he does nothing unless he really needs to do that. If the leader wants to move things and he has the capability to do that at a certain time, they can do basically anything faster than anything you know in Israel. Any vice mayor in China have more ability to act fast and efficient than our prime minister. Okay. Just to tell you a story, we hosted a guy with my former position, the party secretary of Jiangsu province, was in Israel. And when he came to Israel, and Prime Minister at the time was Olmert, and we talked about doing a joint R&D agreement. When we went to the airport to farewell him, and he said at the airport, "Listen, guys, it's a great idea. In 2 weeks from now, you'll have the vice governor coming from Jiangsu, and he comes with the approval for $10 million. And okay, we said, we have to check it. It's not so simple. Of course it's not so simple. Though the Prime Minister said it's very important to have such a fund, the answer we got is forget about it. $10 million for a fund with a province in China? Never. It took us almost 2 years to sign an agreement of $1 million mutual commitment. Of course, no money, just commitment. So that's the Prime Minister in Israel versus the Party Secretary of Jiangsu. He's, by the way, now the Vice President of China. But that shows you how powerful is the government there and the ability to put funds to promote business. We had the Vice Mayor of Wuxi here 3 weeks ago. We showed her 6 technologies. And within 2 weeks, in my visit to Jiangsu, she already showed me where she wants to put the systems of one of the companies in a project that is being built in Wuxi. So, like I said, difference between provinces is like different between countries in Europe. What is important for everywhere is to choose which technology you're dealing with, which industry, where is it concentrated, and then where can you find also support from the government. It's like, again, it's like saying Europe. It's very difficult to say each place where to go and how to go. You have to do a lot of homework.
Okay, thanks. Just one more question. We don't have any. We're already overlapping to the next session. So one question, which to me is very interesting, I want Danny to answer, since he's working under Chinese control for the last 2 years. how is it? What are the main challenges? And be very brief, please.
As I said, it's not easy, and if somebody will tell you it's easy and straightforward, it is not. They think differently, they make decisions differently. I remember when we signed the contract not with the Chinese but with the Japanese, and somebody told me, come to a company which is 10,000 people, but there's 10,000 people that can say no, but only one can say yes, so talk to him. And this was the president. It's the same in China. I mean, the decision-making process is different. Something which is obvious to you, and you can make a decision on the spot, for them takes a long cycle. And again, it's function of experience, it's function of exposure to the international business, etc. But I think it's a good challenge, I think it's a huge experience, and I'm very happy we did it.
Thank you, everybody.